Stop scrolling. I need you to read that title one more time. 2 years. Not 2 days. Not 2 weeks. Not one dramatic moment of confrontation that settled everything and moved on. 2 years. Of quiet, consistent, completely undetected revenge against a woman who insulted his wife at a wedding, and then walked away thinking nothing of it. 2 years of showing up to the same social gatherings, sitting at the same tables, smiling the same smile, and every single time, every single occasion, landing one perfectly placed comment that nobody else noticed but her. And she still has not figured out that it is intentional. That is the story we are talking about today. And I promise you, by the time we get through all of it, by the time you understand exactly what he has been doing and how he has been doing it and why, you are going to feel something. Not anger. Not shock. Something quieter than that. Something that sounds a lot like satisfaction. Stay with me. Before anything else, before we get into the revenge, before we get into the 2 years of perfectly executed payback, I need you to understand the insult. Because the insult is everything. Not because it was dramatic. Not because it was loud or aggressive or the kind of thing that leaves a mark you can point to. But because of what it was, the specific, subtle, socially weaponized kind of cruelty that women have been perfecting for centuries. The kind that hides behind sweetness. The kind that comes wrapped in a smile. The kind that the person delivering it can always deny. Oh, I did not mean it like that, you are being so sensitive, while the person receiving it knows exactly what it was. That kind. And to understand it fully, you need to understand who delivered it. Let us call her Rachel. Rachel is the kind of woman who has always been the center of her social circle. Not because she is the warmest or the most genuine, but because she is the most strategic. She understands social dynamics the way a chess player understands the board. She knows who matters and who does not. She knows how to position herself. She knows how to be charming to the people whose approval she wants and subtly diminishing to the people she perceives as competition or threat. She had been friends, loosely, peripherally, with our narrator's wife for several years. Not close friends. The kind of friends who move in the same circles, attend the same events, have enough mutual connections that avoiding each other is impossible. The kind of friendship that is really just managed proximity. And our narrator, let us call him Mark, had always noticed something about the way Rachel interacted with his wife. Something small. Something he could never quite name. A slight edge beneath the warmth. A fraction of a second where the smile did not quite reach the eyes. A comment here and there that was technically complimentary but left his wife feeling slightly smaller somehow. He noticed. His wife, who is warm and generous and inclined to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, brushed it off. Said he was being overprotective. Said Rachel was just like that, it did not mean anything. Mark did not push it. But he noticed. He filed it away. The way patient people file things away. Now let us talk about the wedding. Not Mark and his wife's wedding, someone else's. A mutual friend's wedding. 3-day affair. And I want you to understand what 3 days means in this context because it matters. 3 days of events. 3 days of getting dressed and doing hair and makeup and showing up looking your best. 3 days of outfits because a 3-day wedding means at minimum 3 different looks, more if you are taking it seriously. 3 days of effort. Mark's wife put in that effort. She showed up to every event. She dressed carefully and thoughtfully. She did her hair and makeup. She was present and warm and genuinely happy for the couple getting married. By the 3rd day, the final brunch, she was tired. 3 days of events is tiring. She had dressed more casually than the previous days. Still put together. Still appropriate. Just comfortable. A little more relaxed. The way anyone would be by day 3 of a wedding celebration. She walked in smiling. And Rachel, who was standing near the entrance, looking immaculate as always, holding a mimosa, looked up and saw her. And said, "Oh, hi babe. Wow. You look comfy." One word. Comfy. Said with a smile. Said with that specific warmth that is not warmth at all. Said in the tone of someone giving a compliment that everyone within earshot would hear as a compliment, while the person receiving it heard exactly what it was. You look comfy. Translation. You did not try hard enough. You look underdressed. I look better than you and I want everyone in this room to know it. Delivered with a smile. Wrapped in sweetness. Completely, plausibly deniable. Mark's wife laughed it off. She told Mark later it was nothing. Rachel is just like that. It was a wedding, everyone is tired by day 3, it did not mean anything. But Mark had been standing close enough to see her face in the half-second before she laughed it off. He had seen the flicker. That specific, almost imperceptible flicker of someone who has just been hit in a place they did not expect and is immediately covering it because showing that it landed feels like losing. His wife covered it perfectly. She laughed. She moved on. She spent the rest of the brunch being warm and generous and present, and gave Rachel not one single thing to work with. But Mark had seen it. And something settled in him in that moment. Not anger. Not the hot, reactive, immediately visible kind of feeling that demands an outlet right now. Something much quieter. Much more patient. Much more dangerous. He did not say anything to Rachel that day. He smiled at her. Made small talk. Was perfectly pleasant. Gave her absolutely nothing to read in his face or his behavior. Because Mark understood something important about people like Rachel. Confrontation does not work on them. Direct confrontation gives them exactly what they want. A scene, a moment. A story they can tell later where they are the victim of an overreacting husband who cannot take a joke. Confrontation lets them deny, deflect, reframe. Confrontation hands them the narrative. Mark was not going to hand her the narrative. He was going to write his own. One comment at a time. Over 2 years. And she was never going to see it coming. Before we get into exactly what he did, exactly how the revenge worked, what he said and when and how, I want to talk about the philosophy behind it. Because this is not a story about someone who lost their temper and did something impulsive. This is a story about someone who understood the weapon being used against his wife and chose to return it in kind. Rachel's weapon was the social compliment. The comment that sounds positive on the surface but carries a precise negative payload underneath. The kind of thing that makes the target feel bad while giving the deliverer complete deniability. The kind of thing that nobody else in the room registers as cruel, but that lands exactly where it was aimed. Mark decided to use the same weapon. Against her. Consistently. Over 2 years. The genius of it, and I use that word deliberately, is that it was completely invisible. To everyone else at every social gathering they both attended, Mark was just a guy making conversation. Being friendly. Tossing out comments. Nothing unusual. Nothing aggressive. Only Rachel felt them. Only Rachel heard the specific frequency they were broadcast on. And because the weapon is designed to be deniable, because its entire power comes from its plausible innocence, she could not say anything. She could not call him out. She could not tell anyone what was happening because the moment she tried to explain it she would sound exactly like what Rachel had spent years making other people sound like. Oversensitive. Unable to take a compliment. Reading too much into things. So what did he actually say? What were these 2 years of comments? Mark lists some of them in his Reddit post. And I want to read them to you carefully. Because each one is a masterpiece of the specific form. The first one came about a month after the wedding. They were at a dinner party. Rachel arrived looking, as she always did, perfectly put together. Clearly had spent significant time and effort on her appearance. Mark looked at her and said, completely warmly, completely naturally, Rachel, I love how you always try so hard. It is genuinely admirable. You always try so hard. Not you look amazing. Not you always look great. You always try so hard. The compliment that is not a compliment. The observation that sounds like praise but carries underneath it the implication that the trying is visible. That the effort shows. That there is something slightly desperate about it. Delivered with a warm smile. In front of several people. Who heard it as a compliment. Rachel heard something else entirely. Mark watched her face. The same flicker he had seen on his wife's face at the wedding. There and gone in half a second. She smiled. Said thank you. Moved on. But he had seen it. And he knew the weapon worked. The second comment came a few weeks later. Different gathering. Rachel was talking about a recent trip she had taken. Describing it in the slightly performative way that some people describe experiences, making sure everyone understood how curated and enviable her life was. Mark listened, nodded, and when she finished he said, that sounds incredible. You are so good at making your life look a certain way. Making your life look a certain way. Not making your life amazing. Not living such an incredible life. Making your life look a certain way. The implication buried in plain sight. That it is performance. That it is appearance. That there is a difference between what her life looks like and what it actually is. Again, deniable. Completely. If she called it out, he could say, I just meant you have great taste, you present things beautifully, it was a compliment. But she knew. And he knew she knew. And neither of them said a word about it. That is where part 1 ends. And I know that is exactly the moment you want to keep going. Because part 2 is where we go through the full 2 years. Every major comment. Every gathering. Every perfectly placed observation that landed exactly where it was aimed while everyone else in the room heard nothing but pleasantries. And then we get to the moment about 3 months ago when Mark posted all of it to Reddit. And Reddit had a lot to say. Some of it was exactly what you would expect. And some of it was not. Stay with me. Subscribe if you have not already. Part 2 is coming. And it is worth every single second, so we know the weapon. We know the philosophy. We know the first 2 shots fired. Now let us go through the full 2 years. Because this is where the story becomes something genuinely extraordinary. Not because any individual comment is dramatic. Not because any single moment is explosive or confrontational or the kind of thing that makes a scene. But because of the consistency. Because of the patience. Because of the way Mark, month after month, gathering after gathering, dinner party after dinner party, showed up with the same quiet energy. The same warm smile. The same perfectly calibrated comment that landed exactly where it was aimed while everyone else in the room heard nothing but pleasant conversation. 2 years. Let us go through it. Month 3. A birthday party for a mutual friend. Rachel had recently started a new job. She was talking about it at length, the title, the company, the trajectory. Making sure everyone in the conversation understood that things were going well for her. Very well. Enviably well. Mark listened attentively. And when she finished, he said, That is so great, Rachel. You have always been so focused on appearances. I mean, appearances of success. The way things look from the outside. It is a real skill. Focused on appearances. He caught himself or appeared to catch himself. That half correction, I mean appearances of success, was deliberate. It made the original phrase land harder. It drew attention to it. And then the recovery was just incomplete enough that the original word stayed in the air. Rachel smiled. Said thank you. But her eyes did something. Mark noted it. Filed it away. Moved on. Month 5. A housewarming party. Rachel had recently redecorated her apartment. She was giving a small tour to a group of people, showing off the new furniture, the new artwork, the carefully curated aesthetic of a life she had assembled with significant intention. Mark was part of the group. He looked around the apartment, nodded appreciatively, and said, Rachel, this is incredible. Everything looks so deliberate. Like every single thing was chosen to make a specific impression. I find that fascinating about you. Everything looks so deliberate. Chosen to make a specific impression. Again, technically complimentary. A stranger hearing it would think, what a nice thing to say. What an observant guest. Rachel heard, your home is a performance. Nothing here is natural or genuine. You assembled this to impress people and it is obvious. She laughed lightly. Said she had just been having fun with it. But the laugh came a half second too late. Mark noticed. He always noticed. Month 7. A dinner party. Rachel had been talking about a mutual acquaintance. Someone who had recently gone through a difficult public situation. She was handling the topic with that specific energy some people have when discussing others' misfortune. Not openly cruel, but not quite kind either. Walking the line. Enjoying the story a little too much while maintaining the appearance of sympathy. Mark waited until she finished. And then said quietly, You know what I have always admired about you, Rachel? You always know exactly what to say in every situation. Every word so carefully chosen. It must be exhausting. Every word so carefully chosen. It must be exhausting. The compliment that is a mirror. He was describing her exactly and precisely while appearing to praise her. You are calculated. You are performative. You work hard at managing how you come across. And I see it. All of it. This one landed differently than the others. He could tell by the way she went slightly quiet for a moment before recovering. Not the flicker this time. Something that stayed a half second longer. Like she was beginning to wonder. Month 9. A graduation celebration. Rachel arrived with a new boyfriend. Clearly someone she was proud to be seen with. Attractive, successful, the kind of person you bring somewhere specifically to be noticed with. Mark shook his hand, made pleasant conversation, and then at one point talking to the group he said about Rachel. She has always had such a good eye for acquisition. The right apartment. The right job. The right. He gestured vaguely toward the boyfriend. Everything really. It is a talent. Acquisition. Not she always chooses well. Not she has great taste. Acquisition. The word you use for objects. For things you obtain. For items you add to a collection. He had just described her relationship as something she had acquired. Like furniture. Said warmly. In a group. With a smile. The boyfriend heard a compliment. Rachel heard exactly what it was. Her jaw tightened slightly. Just slightly. Mark smiled at her. She smiled back. The game continued. Month 12. 1 year in. A Christmas gathering. The whole regular social group together. Wine and food and that specific warmth of people who have known each other long enough to be comfortable. Rachel was holding court. She was good at that, always had been. The center of a small group, telling a story, commanding the room. Mark waited until she finished. Until the group laughed. Until the moment of her maximum social triumph. And then he said, "You know, I have been thinking about this for a while. And I finally figured out what it is about you, Rachel. You are someone who needs an audience. Not in a bad way, in a fascinating way. Like you are most yourself when people are watching. When there is no audience you almost seem to, I do not know, diminish a little. Does that make sense? You need an audience. You diminish without one. You are only fully yourself when people are watching. Translation: you are not real. You are a performance. Without the audience there is nothing there." Said thoughtfully, analytically, like he was paying her a deep and genuine compliment about her fascinating nature. The group nodded, made sounds of interested agreement. Someone said, "That is such an interesting observation." Rachel looked at him. For the first time, not a flicker, not a tightening jaw, she looked at him. Directly. For a sustained moment. Like she was seeing something she had not quite seen before. Like a question was forming. Mark held her gaze. Smiled warmly. And turned back to the group. Month 14. A spring birthday party. Rachel pulled him aside briefly. She said, "Can I ask you something?" He said, "Of course." She said, "You always say the nicest things. But sometimes I walk away from conversations with you feeling I do not know. Weird." Mark looked at her with genuine concern. He said, "Weird how?" She said, "I cannot explain it. It is probably nothing." He said, "Rachel, I think you are incredible. I genuinely do. I hope nothing I have ever said has made you feel otherwise." She looked at him. He looked back. The picture of sincerity. She said, "No, of course not. Never mind. Forget I said anything." He said, "I hope you know how much we all value you." She smiled. Said thank you. Walked away. And Mark stood there for a moment. Thinking, she is starting to feel it. She just cannot name it yet. Good. Month 16. A summer barbecue. Rachel had lost some weight since the last time the group had seen her. She looked good and she knew it. There was a specific energy to her that day. The energy of someone who has worked towards something and arrived. Several people complimented her. She was gracious about it. Warm. Appropriately modest. And then Mark said, "Rachel, you look amazing. You have clearly been working really hard. There is something almost effortful about you today. In the best way. Like watching someone who has really committed to a project. Effortful. Like watching someone committed to a project, you can see the work. The effort is visible. This is a project you have been running. Wrapped in the best way. Deniable. Perfectly delivered." She looked at him. Something shifted in her expression. Not the flicker from the early months. Not the jaw tightening from month 9. Something more unsettled. Like pieces were beginning to arrange themselves into a picture she did not want to see. Month 18. A dinner party. Rachel and Mark ended up in a one-on-one conversation while others were getting drinks. She said, "You know, you are one of the most interesting people in our group." He said, "That is a very kind thing to say." She said, "You always seem to know exactly what you are doing. Like everything is very considered. With you." He looked at her. And he smiled. And he said, "I learned from the best." 3 seconds of silence. She looked at him. He looked back. Warmly. Pleasantly. Completely unreadable. Someone rejoined the conversation. The moment passed. But it did not pass for Rachel. He could see that. It did not pass at all. Month 20. 2 months ago. Another gathering. Rachel arrived and Mark noticed something different about her energy. She was slightly more guarded than usual. Slightly more careful. Like someone who has started watching something they had not been watching before. Like someone who suspects, but cannot prove. He said nothing unusual that evening. Just warm. Pleasant. Normal. Sometimes the most powerful move is silence. Sometimes showing someone that you do not need to do anything. That you are completely comfortable, completely relaxed, while they are quietly unraveling, is the most devastating thing of all. He smiled at her across the room once. She looked away first. Month 24. 2 weeks ago. The gathering where it finally almost broke the surface. They were in a group conversation. Someone made a joke at their own expense. Self-deprecating, funny, the room laughed. And Rachel said something. A small thing. Reflexive. The kind of comment she had been making her entire social life without thinking. A compliment that was not a compliment. Aimed at someone else in the group. And before anyone else reacted, Mark looked at her. Just looked at her. With the specific expression of someone who sees exactly what is happening and wants the other person to know they see it. No words. Just recognition. Rachel went very still. And in that stillness, in that single suspended moment, Mark saw it. She knew. Not everything. Not the full 2 years. But enough. She knew that he knew. And she knew that he had been doing something. She just could not name what. She just could not prove it. And that is the thing about her own weapon turned against her. It is designed to be unprovable. She built it that way. That night Mark went home. Sat down. And wrote everything out. Every comment. Every gathering. Every month of the 2 years. Posted it to Reddit. And asked one question. Am I wrong for doing this? What Reddit said and what happened in the comments, that is all part 3. And I will warn you. Reddit was not unanimous on this one. Not even close. Stay with me. Subscribe if you have not already. Part 3 is next. So Mark posted everything. 2 years of it. Every comment. Every gathering. Every perfectly placed observation that landed exactly where it was aimed while everyone else in the room heard nothing but pleasantries. He wrote it all out clearly, methodically, the way he did everything. He did not dramatize it. He did not make himself sound heroic. He just laid out what happened, what Rachel did at the wedding, what he decided, what he had been doing since, and asked one question. Am I wrong for doing this? And Reddit had a lot to say. The post went up late on a Thursday night. By Friday morning it had tens of thousands of upvotes. By Friday evening the comment section had exploded into one of the most genuinely divided threads Mark had seen on the platform. Because this story, unlike most stories on Reddit, did not have a clean verdict. It did not have an obvious answer. It had 2 completely legitimate, completely opposing responses that both made sense depending on who you were and how you saw the situation. And that tension, that genuine unresolvable tension, is what made the thread extraordinary. Let us start with the support, because there was a lot of it. The top comment, the one that set the tone for the supportive side of the thread, said this: "What you did is not revenge in the traditional sense. You did not embarrass her publicly. You did not tell people what she did. You did not blow up her reputation or her relationships. You simply returned her own weapon to her. The exact same tool she has been using on women for years, turned around, aimed back with precision and patience. I do not see anything wrong with that. I see justice." This comment got thousands of upvotes. And the replies underneath it were full of people, mostly women, saying yes. Exactly. Because they recognized what Rachel had done at that wedding. They had been on the receiving end of exactly that kind of comment. They knew the specific feeling of being hit in a way that leaves no mark anyone else can see. They knew what it was like to have someone smile at you while they diminish you and know that if you said anything you would be the difficult one, the oversensitive one, the one who cannot take a compliment. They knew. And watching someone turn that weapon around quietly, patiently, with complete precision, felt like something they had wanted to see for a long time. One comment said, "The detail that gets me is the month 14 moment. When she pulled him aside and said she felt weird after conversations with him, but could not explain it. And he looked her in the eye and said, "I hope nothing I have ever said has made you feel otherwise." He gave her the exact response she would have given anyone who confronted her. He mirrored her completely. That is not just revenge. That is art. The replies under this one were mostly just people saying the word art is exactly right. Because it is. What Mark had been doing for 2 years was not random or impulsive or emotionally driven. It was craft. It was the careful, deliberate application of a skill he had studied by watching her use it, and then turning it around with a level of precision that she had never expected from anyone because nobody had ever done it to her before. Another comment focused specifically on the Christmas party moment. Month 12. The "you need an audience" comment. It said, "That one is the most devastating because it is the most true." He was not making something up about her. He was not inventing a flaw to exploit. He was describing exactly who she is, accurately, clearly to her face, while making it sound like an observation rather than an accusation. She cannot refute it because it is true. And she cannot call it cruel because it was framed as fascinating. That is the move of someone who has been paying very close attention for a very long time. This comment generated a long sub-thread about the ethics of using truth as a weapon, about whether something can be simultaneously true and cruel, about whether the cruelty is in the content or the intent. It was one of the most genuinely interesting conversations in the thread. But then came the other side. The dissenting voices started appearing around the 3rd hour after the post went up, and they were not trolls. They were not people being contrarian for sport. They were people making a legitimate argument. The most upvoted dissenting comment said, "I understand why he did this. I genuinely do. What Rachel did at that wedding was cruel and she deserved a response. But 2 years. 2 years of calculated, consistent, deliberate psychological targeting? At what point does justified response become something else? At what point does the patience and the precision cross a line? Because what he describes is not a moment of standing up for his wife. It is a sustained campaign. And I think he needs to be honest with himself about what that says about him." This comment also got thousands of upvotes. And it landed differently than the supportive ones, because it asked a question that the supportive comments had not asked. Not was Rachel wrong. She clearly was. But what does it mean to spend 2 years of your life on this? What does it cost you? What does it say about where your energy went? Another dissenting comment said, "His wife moved on. She brushed it off. She did not ask him to do this. She did not know he was doing this. He has been carrying this for 2 years, maintaining this campaign, showing up to gatherings with this specific intention, keeping score, without telling the person he was supposedly defending. At some point you have to ask, is this for her? Or is this for him?" This one generated the most replies of any comment in the thread, because it hit something real. Because Mark himself, in a reply lower down in the thread that most people did not see, said something that answered this question more honestly than anything else in the post. He said, "You are right that it started for her. But somewhere around month 6 I have to admit it became something else. It became, I do not know how to describe it. A thing I had. Project. Something that was mine. I am not sure that is entirely healthy, and I am not sure I am entirely proud of it." The honesty of that reply, the willingness to look directly at his own motivation and say it out loud, is something the comment section respected enormously. Even the people who disagreed with what he had done. Then there was the comment that the whole thread kept returning to, the one that was not cleanly on either side. It said, "Here is what I keep thinking about. Rachel has spent her whole social life doing this to people. Every gathering, every party, every dinner. She has been landing these comments and watching them flicker across people's faces and feeling something from that. Feeling powerful. Feeling superior. Feeling whatever it is that makes a person do this consistently for years. And for the first time, maybe for the first time ever, she is on the receiving end. She is the one feeling weird after conversations. She is the one who cannot explain it. She is the one lying awake wondering, is that justice? Or is it just the same thing in a different direction? The same thing in a different direction." That phrase stuck. People kept quoting it, because it named the uncomfortable truth at the center of the whole story. Mark had not invented a new weapon. He had picked up hers and used it, which raises a question that does not have a clean answer. Does using someone's weapon against them make you like them? Or does it make you just? Reddit debated this for days. And then came the update. 2 weeks after the original post, Mark came back. And the update was unexpected. Not dramatic. Not a confrontation. Not a scene. Something quieter. He said he had told his wife everything, the whole 2 years. He said he had been sitting with the comments section, particularly the dissenting voices, and something had shifted in him. Not guilt exactly, but a kind of clarity about what he had been carrying, about why. He sat down with his wife one evening and told her about the wedding, about what he had seen on her face, about the decision he had made. About 2 years of perfectly placed comments at dinner parties and birthday gatherings and Christmas celebrations. She listened to the whole thing, without interrupting. When he finished, there was a long silence. And then she said, "I knew something was going on. I did not know what. But I knew." He said, "Are you angry?" She thought about it for a moment. She said, "No, I am not angry. But I want to ask you something." He said, "Okay." She said, "Are you done now?" And Mark said he sat with that question for a long time. Really sat with it. Thought about the 2 years. Every comment. Every gathering. The way Rachel had looked at him in month 24. The way the pieces were arranging themselves for her into a picture she almost had. And then he thought about his wife, who had moved on, who had brushed it off at the wedding and kept going and built her life and been warm and generous and present, while he had been carrying this for 2 years. He looked at his wife and said, "Yes, I am done." She nodded and said, "Good, because she is not worth 2 more years of you. She is not worth 2 more years of you." That line, that specific line. The comment section when the update went up, people just kept quoting it back. Because it reframes the whole thing. Not what you did was wrong. Not what you did was right. Just, she is not worth 2 more years of you. Which is the truest thing anyone said in the entire thread. Because here is the thing about sustained revenge. It works. In this case, it genuinely worked. Rachel felt it. She is still feeling it. She will probably keep feeling it. But it also costs you 2 years of showing up to gatherings with a specific intention. 2 years of maintaining the performance. 2 years of carrying something your wife did not even know you were carrying. That is 2 years of your energy. 2 years of your attention. 2 years of yourself. Given to someone who insulted your wife with 1 word at a wedding. Comfy. 1 word. And he gave it 2 years. So what do we take from all of this? I think there are 2 things. The first is about Rachel. What Rachel did and what people like Rachel do is real. The social compliment that is not a compliment. The smile that carries a payload. The cruelty that hides behind sweetness and deniability. It is real and it is damaging and it deserves a response. Mark's response was, by any technical measure, effective, precise, delivered with a skill that matched hers. She felt it. She is still feeling it. And she cannot call it out because it was built to be uncallable. He won. By her rules. On her terms. With her weapon. He won. But the second thing is about him. About what winning cost. Because his wife moved on. She brushed it off and kept going and was warm and generous and present. And he spent 2 years on it. Not because she asked him to. Because something in him needed to. And there is nothing wrong with that exactly. It is human, it is understandable, it makes complete sense. But his wife's question, "Are you done now?" and his own answer, "Yes," and the reason for the answer. She is not worth 2 more years of you. That is the real story. Not the revenge. The letting go. The moment you decide that the person who hurt someone you love does not get any more of your time. Any more of your energy. Any more of the best, most creative, most patient parts of you. Because you have better things to do with those parts. People who deserve them. Drop a comment. Tell me which side you were on reading this. Team Mark. 2 years of justice perfectly executed? Or team, she is not worth 2 more years of you? Because I think this comment section is going to be genuinely divided. And I want to hear where you land. Subscribe if you have not already. Because this is what we do every single week. Real stories. Real people. Real questions that do not have clean answers. Hit that subscribe button right now. Bell icon on. I will see you next week.